Let's get started. Welcome everyone to the Tree and Design Review Board meeting of December 17th, 2024. John, would you do a roll call for us, please?
Sure. Board Member Diedler. Board Member Bush.
Here.
And Chair Langberg.
Here.
All right. We do have a quorum today. We are missing Board Member Level, who is absent, Board Member Balf, who is absent, and Vice Chair Hanley, who is absent.
I see her here somewhere, but okay, great. So we have minutes to approve, but we don't have a quorum to do that based on who's on the board, because who's sitting here, because Carrie was not at that meeting.
Correct. So we will move those minutes to the next regular scheduled meeting.
Perfect. Any comments from the public regarding items not on the agenda? Nobody here in the room. Anybody on Zoom? Oh, that's our arborist up there.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything yet, and Planning Department did not receive any comments.
Okay, thank you, John. Any statements of conflicts of interest from the board? I'll just say that I have a project working on next door to this project. It's really an interior remodel. It's doesn't affect, in my sense, any ruling on this current project. So, but just to put that out there, 416 West Street. So moving along, then we have our one regular agenda item, 426 West Street. Seth and Melissa Hanley for a tree removal.
Sure. So the project applicant is seeking approval from the tree board for the removal of one coast live oak at 426 West Street. The tree itself, it measures 26 inches in diameter breast height per the Sebastopol Municipal Code. Protected trees measuring more than 10 inches in diameter breast height in multifamily and commercial zones require the review and approval of Design Review Board. The project applicant has applied for this tree removal permit due to the concerns as it leans over significantly towards adjacent property. It has split trunks and the tree exhibits wounds with internal rot. Ben Anderson, the city's certified arborist, reviewed the application and conducted a site visit and prepared the arborist report dated November 1st, 2024, which is attached to the agenda item today. In summary, the report stated the decay cavity in the lower trunk is a substantial structural defect and likely point of failure, which would cause significant property damage to the adjacent home. The report mentions a mitigation measure of regular pruning to maintain clearance from the neighboring house and roof, but that removal would be reasonable given the structural defect and dominance of the remaining oak. I won't go much more into detail as part of the report because that summary is part of the staff report this evening. The tree board, staff has given the tree board a recommendation for removal with the conditions attached, and I am happy to answer any questions. Ben Anderson is also here this afternoon. He does have an appointment that he will need to leave around 2:45 today. So if we do have questions, we should answer them before that time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Any questions for staff from the board? Lynn or Carrie? No questions, okay. Then would our applicant like to give us a little presentation or have anything to add? Please come to the podium, Mr. Hanley.
Hello, Seth Hanley. I own with my wife the property at 426 West Street. I think John has pretty much summarized the concerns around this tree. I would just draw your attention to the photographs starting on page 16 of the document that they prepared through 21, 22. It's pretty self-explanatory that there are 3 oak trees in the backyard, 2 of which are in pretty good shape, but this one, unfortunately, I think through a lack of maintenance has been allowed to grow towards and over the neighboring property, and it has the structural defects that have been highlighted by the arborist reports as well. And we're concerned, obviously, about our neighbors, and especially going into the stormy season. There's already more dead wood on the ground that's fallen out of the tree over the last sort of couple of weeks, and we think it's just best for everybody to get it out of there. We don't like cutting trees down, but in some cases it has to be done, and we think this is one of those cases. So we hope you'll approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for our applicant? Nope. Lynn, any questions? No. Okay. Any comments from the public on this item? Nobody in the audience? Anybody on the screen out there? Doesn't look like it.
We do have one. I'm not sure. Donovan, did you want to make a
Okay.
public comment? Or if you are, please raise your hand and we'll recognize you.
Going once.
Okay. Doesn't look like he has any comments. So
Okay. Well, then we'll take it back to the board for deliberation. Carrie, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thanks. But I wanted to say that I did go by the site. I looked at the tree. I was able to look at it also with another arborist size. Very comprehensive tree reports. And I'm inclined to essentially allow the removal of the oak tree based on the city arborist report. It does likely see a foreseeable threat to life or property, specifically the neighbors. It's also, in pretty poor health, really. And I think it would be a good idea for the board to approve the removal.
Thank you. Lynn, any further comments? You can turn on your microphone there. And
I'd say it's an awkward, out of place tree, and it won't be a loss to anyone to have it removed. It will certainly enhance the attractiveness of the tree next door. So.
Mhm. Well, we know where he stands. So that's good. I don't really have anything to add. I mean, I did mention I've been at the site next door, and it's clearly a hazard to that client, and I think it would make sense to move forward with this. So we could keep it simple, and somebody'd like to make a motion? Go ahead.
As I look at this, they have to replace that tree with 3 other trees. And I think in some cases that's an onerous thing, because this seems like a black and white case of a tree that should be removed. And so I think it'd be nice or appropriate, really, to waive that requirement of the replacement trees.
So there's a requirement for either replacement or a fee, in lieu fee.
correct.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any comments on that, Carrie? Or?
No, I just think that there's just an in lieu fee for the replacement value, like any other normal applicant would have to pay that. So,
Yeah.
and then again, that in lieu fee would go toward the city coffers for planting other trees that aren't, or for areas that are, deemed more acceptable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sort of as a precedent, right? That's what we should ask for everybody in this situation. So it makes sense to keep that going. Okay. Any other comments? Would you like to make a motion, Carrie?
Yeah, I'm just going to make a motion to approve the removal of the tree as submitted. No other conditions.
Okay. Second? I have a second?
Second.
Great. Okay. Any further discussion? No. Could we take a vote, John?
Yes. Board Member Diedler,
Aye.
Board Member Bush,
Aye.
and Chair Langberg.
Aye.
And so that motion passes with 3 ayes and the 2 absences. of board member Level and Vice Chair Hanley.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. Yeah. That's
Steph, I just have a comment on how it should be cut down.
Okay.
You want to hear it now? Oh, sure. It's just, if you try digging up all the roots of that tree to keep it from regrowing, you're going to harm other roots on the adjacent tree. But if you cut it slightly below the ground level, you'll find that the new branches come out of the cambium, and when it's down below the level of the dirt, there's hardly any cambium exposed. And just if whoever takes it down doesn't want to get their chainsaw dirty, if you trench around it, wash it down, and make it so that you cut it slightly an inch below ground, you'll save a lot of trouble with the regrowth.
Thank you for that.
all right. That's our one agenda item for this very special meeting. We can go on to planning department update from John and
Sure.
our new director.
Absolutely. So I am pleased to announce that the city did hire a new community development director, Emmy Terrio, and I will go ahead and pass it on to her to introduce herself.
Anyway, thank you, and good evening, good afternoon, I guess it is. So my name is Emmy Terrio. I grew up here in Sebastopol, one of 9 children. So if you went to school in the 70s or early 80s, you probably went to school with one of my siblings, if not myself. I have extensive experience in design review myself. Actually, my first job for the town of Tiburon, I was the main staff liaison for the design review board there, and then several years there and several years with the city of Napa doing their historic review for their culture historic commission right when the earthquake happened. So did quite a bit of design review because we had to repair a lot of beautiful Victorians and Queen Anne's and this sort of thing that had been severely damaged during the earthquake and all that, the architectural considerations and the historic preservation considerations. And then, of course, because I grew up here, I have understanding of Sebastopol's unique community concerns and aesthetic, as it were. And I have about 26 years as a urban planner, a degree from Sonoma State, and just love the area and love to be able to give back to Sebastopol. It's actually not much larger than when I moved here in the early 1971. I think it was 4,000 people. It's different. There's no train down the middle of Main Street, and there's street lights and a movie house. But other than that, the population actually has remained pretty steady to the extent we can keep it that way while meeting our housing obligations. It'll be interesting. Anyway, so I'm glad to meet all of you folks, and I'm sure there's going to be some changes in the future, and we'll figure out how to address concerns about design review and really best foot forward on design, because I think design really matters in the quality of construction and just the livability of a community. So I'm grateful for the work you do and look forward to working together. You'll probably be getting, if you're continuing on or not, with the committee. I would like to meet with you individually just to get a earful on what brought you to serving the community and what your concerns are, where you feel like there's opportunities and that sort of thing. I would love to meet with you individually, do a little meet and greet, as it were. Anyway, pleased to meet you.
Where was your house? Where did you grow up?
Oh, Robinson Road, so off of Bodega Highway.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Nice. Well, welcome.
thank you.
Do you have any other updates?
Yeah, just a couple other ones. So as some of you do know, unfortunately, Zuzi, our planning tech, her last week with us was Wednesday, and she has moved on to the city of Patterson or city of Manteca, sorry, as a assistant planner. So I'm happy to see her move up in her career life, but extremely sad to see her go. There's going to be a large void left in her position, but we are looking at getting some temporary support until we have a full-time role for that position in the future. Couple other items tonight. The Canopy has their final map approval on the consent calendar for their project. As you know, the DRB approved the design and tree removals for that project earlier this year. The Huntley Square project is still moving forward with their building permits and grading permit review, as well as the Canopy, along with their final map. They also have their site improvement plans and building permits in review. I don't have any other updates as far as development projects go. The last meeting we did approve Kathy Austin's project, so they're going to be looking at moving that forward to get those units built there as soon as possible. Last month we did have our public workshop for the Sustainable Transportation Grant in November. It was great turnout. There was about over 100 people that showed up between that 4-hour time frame. And looking to the future, kind of spring, summer, we'll be doing a couple more of those similar style workshops as that project moves forward. The active transportation plan was introduced to council at the November 5th meeting. And then that will be coming back to them on January 21st, hopefully for adoption of that plan with some additions to the projects list there, and then just some clarifications that council had as they reviewed that. And I believe that is it, unless you guys have any other questions.
The Barlow Hotel is moving towards coming in front of us or planning commission, or
Yeah, so we do have and this is something that I'll be sending out to both DRB and planning commission here shortly. There is a request to do a joint meeting with the DRB and planning commission in February. So one of our meetings at that time, and then they're kind of hopefully going to be on track for city council in March for the development agreement, which includes their entitlements and the other components of that project. So that's how that project is moving forward. So that's where the Yaki building currently is. And then the batch plant on Morris Street, which would be their offsite parking site location.
is that meeting meant to be a preliminary review or a final review for the combined bodies?
I will have to check with Jane, but I believe it would be somewhat of a final kind of review of that project. I know that the development agreement is a requirement to go to the planning commission as a recommending body to the city council. So I think that they wanted to include the design review board at that meeting to provide design aspects, so they can do kind of a one meeting with both bodies, so they don't have to go back and forth.
Seems like a pretty big project to be at that final stage when we've not seen it at all. Like, why not do a preliminary with us, even if it's a month ahead of the planning commission meeting?
It was a request that we that myself encumbered upon the applicant, and they have not wanted to go the preliminary review route. So they did request as part of their initial application to be exempt from, or to not go through the design review project. So it is part of for a development agreement, there's negotiation components of it that goes through the city. So
Why would this huge complex project be so streamlined rather than really looked at? How come the request was granted?
the request wasn't, I guess, granted by myself. It's something that, so Jane has stayed on to help work with that project. That is something that she is working with the city as well as the applicant to provide the best route forward. So
Is that the answer?
So Jane is granted permission to take this path, basically, is what you're saying.
Well, I could probably expand upon that. Would you like me to? So in my 7 days tenure with the city, I'll give you the answer I'm able to at this point. As I understand it, they're in a development agreement, which has some benefits to the developer, but also has benefits to the city. It's a revenue generating project. That said, it doesn't revenue, you still need to look at it carefully, how it impacts the community, what benefits it provides the community, and just the design. Is it an attractive facility that provides good walkability and connects well with the community that's near it and in a larger community from a traffic perspective, et cetera. Those are all considerations that are being vetted carefully. We're going to continue to have, hopefully, we're going to have a consultant contract with Four Leaf to continue to keep Jane Riley working on the project for the design review and the planning entitlements. And so we'll have some consistency there. But definitely all those subjects are being looked at, and there will be design review. And we just want to combine, and I think it would be good when you're contemplating potentially combining the different groups to work together as a group in that meeting, and kind of a trial to see how well folks work together and talk about the different matters that you need to talk about, and also that they're interconnected. And so that, as I understand, is what's going on with the project. But definitely it's going to go through design review and the planning entitlement, just like any other use permit would. It's just that there's aspects of the financial aspects of it and how it works in the larger picture that we need to have a development agreement to make it work.
Why would we experiment combining, planning and DRB on one of the biggest projects this town has ever had, rather than starting a little bit more gently, perhaps?
To be honest, I think it's a good idea for the design review board to look at it before it's reviewed by the planning commission and city council. There's been a policy in the past where the DRB was one of the last folks to see it. I think you folks should be seeing these projects earlier on. And so that's partly what the approach we're taking.
But we're seeing it at the same time as the planning
Right,
commission.
right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we've all expressed in the discussion of combining boards how important the preliminary design review process is. But if it comes to us as it's say yay or nay at this point, at the first point we're seeing it, it's hard to, you give design feedback, but it's kind of feels like you're denying something. If you don't like some part of it, you're denying a process that's already steamrolling along.
That is a good point. I think that we need to keep in mind that it's meant to try to streamline it, given that we do have budget considerations that are very real with the city. So we need to remember that, but at the same time, not put aside what really are long-term considerations that you're thoughtfully considering, and that is the design does impact the community. So we have that combined meeting. That doesn't prevent you from saying we're not ready to approve it yet. It's
Right.
not like some of these housing laws that the state has put into place where you really only have so many meetings where you have to make a decision. I wouldn't necessarily say bump the meeting to an additional review just because you're concerned. I think it'd be better to, when you get the packet of materials from, and Jane Riley would be helping us with that report, to have a robust list of questions and ready for the meeting, or even submit those questions even better to staff before the meeting, so we're able to respond to the meeting, so you feel like you're making an informed decision about the project. And if you really at that point don't feel comfortable moving forward, that's something to consider at that time. I don't want you to feel that it's just being railroaded through. That's not the case at all.
Yeah.
We're definitely going through design review. We're just doing the combined meeting for efficiency purposes, but and it doesn't hurt for you folks to be working with the planning commission. You folks have the maybe opposite sides of the coin, but the same coin of shared concerns that kind of need to interconnect. And so I think it's good to have the almost like a workshop format where you're both combining ideas. You'll still have your full say during the meeting, but that's kind of the approach.
Typically we get the packet with only a few days to review. So is it possible to request that, an extra week of the materials ahead of time so we actually have it?
Yeah, I'll work with Jane on getting those materials out to both bodies as, with ample time to review,
Great.
kind of both aspects of the.
And the
The
development
project.
agreement, is that then reviewed at that meeting too? Like or the planning commission gets to weigh in on that, or that's really already negotiated and then decided just by city council?
I believe the development agreement is a fiduciary matter, has several matters that are also really in the purview of city council. Now, things that are in land use realm having to do with design and use permitting, that sort of thing, those will be definitely in design review and planning commission permit.
Yeah. Well, so I'm on the public art committee as well, and we talked about this last meeting, because from my understanding, the applicant is trying to waive the 1% for art part of that, is, to save money. And so we, strongly advocate they don't do that, but I guess we just advocate to the city council then for that, right?
And that's a matter of negotiations.
Yeah.
Just because someone's asked for something doesn't mean that's what's granted. And honestly, I was one of the staff liaisons to the Public Art Committee for Emeryville for several years, helped them get their state designation as a cultural district. And I'm very passionate about public art. I think it's really important for the community. And there's different ways to approach that. I think it's a pro forma consideration probably for them. How do they pencil out the cost of doing a project like this? But I tend to advocate having art in your project benefits you in the long run. It'll attract people to your site. It's good for people, if there's people working on the site, to have the artwork there. Ongoing value of the site are benefited from the public art. And then there's also considerations of art as infrastructure. It doesn't have to be public art isn't just sculptures, although there's lovely sculptures out there. It's water fountains, it's benches, it's eyebrow details on the building that are maybe unique pieces of art in themselves. It's a light show in the canopy that leads to the entryway to the hotel. Those sort of things that you just think kind of outside of the typical, but all the better, because that's the creative spirit that we have at Sebastopol. And so look at it differently. And so that's definitely something that they've made this request, but that doesn't mean that's the only solution is just waiving the requirement. There could be some in lieu approach, which many developers do take advantage of that, of doing in lieu artwork. And it's just working with the public art committee about what does in lieu mean to you? Are you okay with maybe having them do some infrastructure? They had to put benches in anyway. Can they make them pieces of art, do that sort of thing?
Go ahead, Lynn.
Who will be running the meeting, the combined meeting? And are there two separate votes going to be taken as to what DRB handles and the planning department?
Those are excellent questions, and I think they're questions we're working out with the city attorney right now, just the logistics of the meeting. I've run combined workshops before, and typically when I've seen where it's a combined meeting where there's two bodies meeting, making decisions on the project, there would be separate votes, and then there would be a specific purview of what they're looking at. For example, design review board might be looking at things that you would typically look at design work. And then the planning commission would be looking at use permit kind of considerations. So I'm hesitant to give you all the details at this point because I want to confirm them with the city attorney, but definitely we are looking at the logistics. And before the meeting happens, as part of your staff report and or a memorandum to go with the staff report will be some kind of explanation of how the meeting is going to be run, who's going to be in charge of the meeting, how decisions are going to be made. So it's clear to you that it won't be complicated. Hopefully it'll be explanatory. And then if it's not you could always ask questions before and even up to and through the meeting if you're not understanding how the process is working to ask additional questions at that point.
Great, thank you. I had one other question about the makeup of the board moving forward. So we're it's business as usual until the council decides sometime next year if yes or no on combining the boards. Is that right?
Correct. That's been our understanding so far. And then if there is a combination of the two boards, we would go, both of these boards are adopted through a city ordinance. So we have to amend that ordinance, which, goes through planning commission for recommendations to council, and then a 30-day period before that becomes in place. And then we would, start the recruitment process for those newly created roles and positions. So
Right. Okay.
I don't see anything happening overnight. The ordinance component of it is, a minimum of 3 to 4 months, probably.
Mhm, mhm.
It just depends on how early we can get it on a city council meeting agenda, because there's a first reading and a second reading. So,
Right.
and then the 30-day waiting period before, after that second reading is completed, before it goes into effect. So,
Yeah, it'll take a little.
they could make a decision in February or March, depending on what the calendar looks like, and then direct staff to start doing the work. But the two boards would stay as they are until that change happens. And then if we do get any projects that trigger that review of all three authorities, there isn't a policy in place that says that design review has to be the last one. So it would be upon staff making sure that the project goes to design first, and then planning commission, and then city council. So the way it's kind of should have been done over the years, but unfortunately has not been
Mhm.
taken care of.
So we have 3 positions on the board open, and we have applicants for all 3.
All three, yes.
Okay.
We have 2 renewals of their terms that came up this year, and then 1 new applicant for the 1 member who is not returning. So,
Right. Great, thank you.
Mhm.
On that note, I just want to recognize the member who's not returning, Carrie Bush, who's been serving on this board for a decade and serving with great passion, and just have really enjoyed having you on the board with us and everything you bring to it. So thank you for your time and your service.
thank you, Carrie.
Yeah. And with that, we could adjourn the meeting. Thanks very much.
Recording stopped.